In this lecture, we will be talking about Cauchy sequences, and we will show that any Cauchy sequence is bounded, and also that any convergent sequence is a Cauchy sequence. We will look at some examples as we go on. So first of all, let us see what is meant by a Cauchy sequence. It is basically a sequence in which the distance between the terms of the sequence becomes arbitrarily small as we look at the tail end of the sequence. So what does that mean? That means that if you take any epsilon greater than 0, you will be able to get a capital N positive integer, so that the distance between xm and xn will be less than epsilon for all mn greater than equal to capital N. For a convenience, I have written m greater than n. That means that the distance between xm and xn will become less than epsilon after the nth term. So if you take any fixed positive number, you will be able to get a term after which the terms of the sequence will lie at a distance less than epsilon apart from each other. See here, why I wrote it like this is the following: that if m is equal to n, then this inequality is in any case true, because if m is equal to n, then xm is equal to xn, so modulus of that is 0. So since epsilon is greater than 0, this inequality is anyway true. So what we want to say is that this distance between two distinct terms will become less than epsilon after a certain term. To specify that, I have assumed that m and n are greater than equal to that fixed term, and they are not equal. So if they are not equal, then one of them has to be greater than the other. So without loss of generality, I'm writing the criterion as follows. This is called the Cauchy's criterion, which says precisely what is written here on the slide, that if you take any epsilon greater than 0, you will be able to get a positive integer n, so that after the nth term, if you look at two terms of the sequence xm and xn, then the distance between them, that is mod xm minus xn, will be less than epsilon. So if you would just write down the terms of the sequence one after another, suppose, then what you are basically saying that they keep coming closer and closer to each other as you look at the tail end of the sequence. So it isn't as if it is increasing like this or anything like that. You have seen several examples of sequences where the values of the terms of the sequence are not necessarily increasing. It is just a useful way of describing that. Suppose I have listed them like this, then they may not be listed like that on the real line. There may be some oscillation or some decreasing or whatever. But issue is that we will say that it is a Cauchy sequence if the terms become closer and closer to each other as you look at the tail end of the sequence. So I have repeated the same sentence at least 4 or 5 times now. And why am I stressing on this is that such sequences are very interesting sequences, especially on the real line. You can actually see that any Cauchy sequence is necessarily convergent and conversely, but we will take our time over proving this result. In this, by the end of this lecture, what we will show is that every convergent sequence has to be necessarily a Cauchy sequence, and the converse part, that every Cauchy sequence will be convergent, we will be proving at the end of our discussion on subsequences. Okay, so if you have this criterion which is called the Cauchy's criterion, and here also why did I spend some time is the following, that in books you will see that generally it is written for m comma n greater than equal to n. So I have made it clear that if I write it like this, there is no loss of generality in it, and it is easier to understand the second statement which I am going to now make, is that xn is a Cauchy sequence if and only if for any epsilon positive, you will be able to get a capital N positive integer, so that for all little n greater than equal to capital N, and for any positive integer p, the distance between xn plus p and xn is less than epsilon. See, there is no difference as such in making this statement and this statement, because here you are saying that all m and n where m is greater than n. So if m is greater than n, it has to look like some n plus p where p is a positive integer. So this is the same as this statement, and it is clear that if a sequence satisfies this, then it is a Cauchy sequence, and conversely. So let us look at some examples. That is the best way to understand this definition. The first example is the model example for studying sequences, that is the sequence 1 by n. So what is this sequence? This we have seen earlier also. So this sequence looks like 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, and so on. Again, you see my cursor is moving on the right, even though the sequence is a decreasing sequence. So this is just a habit. Okay, so the first term of the sequence is 1, and then it will be half, then 1/3, then 1/4. Actually, it is decreasing towards 0. And I think we have also seen that this limit n tending to infinity 1 by n is equal to 0 in one of the previous lectures. So what I want to show is that this is a Cauchy sequence. So how will we do that? We have to show that given any epsilon greater than 0, certain inequality should hold after a certain term. So whatever inequality to hold should hold, we are just going to stare at that. So suppose I take any m and n positive integers and m is greater than n. Again, I said that this is just a without loss of generality statement. So then you look at what do you have to prove. You have to look at xm minus xn. In that case, that is 1 by m minus 1 by n. Take the modulus of that, and you have to show that that can be made less than any given epsilon greater than 0. So first of all, let us see what is this equal to. So use triangle inequality. Then what do you get? You get mod of 1 by m minus 1 by n is less than or equal to 1 by m plus 1 by n. Right, because it is less than or equal to modulus of 1 by m plus modulus of minus 1 by n, and mod of minus 1 by n is the same as 1 by n. 1 by m, 1 by n are positive numbers, so this is perfectly all right. Now your m is greater than n. So what does that mean? That means that 1 by m is less than 1 by n. So that it should be less than here. So it will be 1 by m plus 1 by n will be less than 2 by n, because this will also be less than 1 by n. So you will get a less than 2 by n here. So given any epsilon greater than 0, if you want to show that this quantity is less than epsilon, it is sufficient to show that this quantity is less than epsilon. There is a typo here, this will be less than, but even if you take care of that, all you have to show is that 2 by n is less than epsilon, then this will automatically be less than epsilon. So how will you do that? You have learned how to manage these things. You just use your what do you say, Archimedean property of real numbers, or a follow-up of that. That is, given any epsilon greater than 0, you look at the real number box 2 by epsilon plus 1. So this is actually an integer, and you can choose any n greater than, this is just a back calculation. All right, so let me just go back and tell you what I'm doing here. I want 2 by n to be less than epsilon. If that is true, then automatically mod of 1 by m minus 1 by n will be less than epsilon. So if you want 2 by n to be less than epsilon, you want your little n to be greater than 2 by epsilon, right? So 2 by n is less than epsilon if and only if 2 by epsilon is less than n. So, but by your definition, you want a positive integer capital N, so that after that positive integer, after the terms after the that in after the term indexed by that positive integer will satisfy this inequality. So to ensure a positive integer in hand, what do you do is 2 by epsilon need not be a positive integer, right? 2 by epsilon is any real number. So look at box of 2 by epsilon. Box of 2 by epsilon is what? It is the greatest integer less than or equal to 2 by epsilon. So that means that if you look at box of 2 by epsilon plus 1, then that is going to be greater than 2 by epsilon. This we have discussed in a previous chapter also, so let us do it carefully here also, that if you just look at this inequality, do this back calculation. I want this to be less than epsilon given any epsilon positive. So that means my number n, which is a positive integer, should be greater than 2 by epsilon. So I have to find a positive integer capital N, so that when n is greater than or equal to that positive integer capital N, then this inequality will hold, that 2 by n will become less than epsilon. So what do I do? I know something about 2 by epsilon. What do I know about 2 by epsilon? That 2 by epsilon is greater than or equal to box 2 by epsilon, and it is strictly less than box 2 by epsilon plus 1, because box 2 by epsilon is the greatest integer less than or equal to 2 by epsilon. So if you look at the integer 2 by box 2 by epsilon plus 1, that will become strictly greater than 2 by epsilon. So what are you getting? You are getting that if you take this number box 2 by epsilon plus 1 as your integer n, then if you let little n be greater than equal to that capital N and m to be greater than little n. So if little m is greater than little n is greater than equal to this integer, then what do you get? And you get, first of all, let me complete this. So you get automatically that n is greater than 2 by epsilon. So 2 by n is less than epsilon, and hence 1 by m minus 1 by n is less than epsilon. So for any epsilon greater than 0, you can take this as your choice of the integer. So my question is this a positive integer? How can you guarantee that? You can guarantee that because epsilon is greater than 0. So since epsilon is greater than 0, box of 2 by epsilon is a non-negative number. It cannot be negative. It can be at most 0. If you look at the greatest integer less than or equal to a positive number, 2 by epsilon is a positive number. So if you try to find out box of 2 by epsilon, that will be at least 0. It may be greater than that also. So when you are looking at this plus 1, that is at least greater than equal to 1. So this is a positive integer. There is no problem with that because epsilon is greater than 0. So there should be no confusion about your arguments. And so given any epsilon greater than 0, you have been able to find a capital N in that, which is precisely equal to this number, so that modulus of 1 by m minus 1 by n is less than epsilon whenever m is greater than n is greater than equal to this capital N. So therefore, by the definition of Cauchy sequence, 1 by n is a Cauchy sequence. I took a little bit of time here to explain it to you why you take such a thing and why is it positive. There should be no confusion about it in your mind. Okay, so let us look at a slightly more difficult, if you like, example. It's not difficult as such. So look at n by n plus 1. Consider this sequence. So you can handle it in many ways. One way is, and which is very useful, is that whenever you have this denominator as n plus 1, what you do is in the numerator you try to write it as n plus 1 plus something. So what will be here, what will happen here? In the numerator you have n and in the denominator you have n plus 1. So if you write n plus 1 here, you will have to actually subtract. You cannot add, you will have to subtract a 1. So n by n plus 1, you can write as n plus 1 minus 1 divided by n plus 1, so that you can write it as 1 minus 1 by n plus 1. So this is a very small trick, but it helps you to handle more complicated problems, as you will see later on. So what we are going to do is we are going to use this second statement of a sequence being a Cauchy sequence. In this form, we will write it down. Okay. So for this, what we do is we look at what is x. Suppose I call xn equal to n by n plus 1. Then I'm writing xn plus p minus xn and modulus of that. So my idea is the same as before. What I will do is I will try to estimate this modulus and then see that given any epsilon greater than 0, how to make it less than epsilon. So let us see what should we do. So what I was telling you was that I can write n by n plus 1 as 1 minus 1 by n plus 1. This is perfectly all right now. So we will do this, it helps. And so in the similar fashion, when you have n plus p divided by n plus p plus 1, you write it as n plus p plus 1 minus 1 divided by n plus p plus 1, so that you get 1 minus 1 by n plus p plus 1. This is all right. So now you just cancel out your 1 from here. So what are you left with is modulus of minus 1 by n plus p plus 1 plus 1 by n plus 1. So use triangle inequality again and remember that mod of minus x is equal to mod x. So what do you get? You get that by triangle inequality this is less than or equal to 1 by n plus p plus 1. This will come plus 1 by n plus 1. This is all you will get. 1 has cancelled out. So it becomes neat. Now what can you do? You can you notice that your n plus 1 is greater than n and n plus p plus 1 is also greater than n. So 1 by n plus p plus 1 is less than 1 by n and 1 by n plus 1 is less than 1 by n. So what do you get? You get 1 by n plus p plus 1 plus 1 by n plus 1 becomes less than 2 by n. So why did you take care of this? You again go back to the definition and see what are you trying to say. When you are writing your m dependent on n like this, that it is n plus p for some p belonging to n, then you are dropping out your m from this condition here. It is obvious, right? Because your Cauchy's criterion was that for any epsilon greater than 0, you should be able to get a positive integer n, so that when m is greater than n is greater than equal to capital N, then mod xm minus xn should be less than epsilon. Now what you're doing is that this m greater than n, you're replacing by any random n plus p. So you're allowing your m to look like n plus p. So obviously you don't have to say anything about n plus p now. If you say that n little n is greater than equal to capital N, then automatically n plus p will also be greater than equal to capital N and n plus p will be greater than n. So this condition will be satisfied for m equal to n plus p. So you in your alternative expression for the Cauchy's criterion, all you require is that for any epsilon greater than 0, you should be able to get a positive integer n, so that after the capital nth term, this inequality will hold xn plus p minus xn less than epsilon. So it is independent of what your p is. That is what I am trying to stress. So therefore, when you have a problem like this, when you are trying to solve it like this, when you are making an estimate, your estimate should not have p as your final choice. When you're looking at it, that will not help. This is not going to help, because whatever you get should be independent of p. So you have to arrange so that you do get a term which does not contain p in its expression. That is what you do. So after you have done this much of algebra and some using some triangle inequality, then problem becomes very easy. Take any epsilon greater than 0. You want that this modulus should be less than epsilon for all little n greater than equal to capital N. You have to find such a capital N. So now you notice that already this number has become strictly less than 2 by n. So if you can show that 2 by n is less than epsilon for all little n greater than equal to capital N, that is sufficient for your uh, working out of the example, right? So therefore, again, as before, see, you are at the same stage. You have 2 by n, and you want this to be less than epsilon, so you want n to be greater than 2 by epsilon. So since you want n to be greater than 2 by epsilon, and 2 by epsilon is a positive real number, so if you look at box of 2 by epsilon plus 1, that is a positive integer. And if you take little n greater than equal to box of 2 by epsilon plus 1, then it becomes greater than 2 by epsilon. And hence, for any p in n, you get that modulus of n plus p divided by n plus p plus 1 minus n by n plus 1 will be less than epsilon whenever n little n is greater than equal to this positive integer. So for given any epsilon greater than 0, you are able to find a capital N dependent on epsilon, so that the required inequality holds. Therefore, n by n plus 1 is a Cauchy sequence. So it's not a big deal once you understand what you're trying to do. Basic thing is this. So next example is just look at n plus 1 by n. It is the same as before. So let me quickly go through this. So again, we will take any n and p in positive integers for the same reason, that we will first estimate what this uh, number is less than, and then using that we will be able to make some statement given any epsilon greater than 0. So we take the n plus pth term and we take the nth term. This is my nth term, right? So again, what I told you was that you try to write it as 1 plus something. So that plus may be minus in some cases, as it was in the previous case, but plus minus of 1 by n plus 1. This is what happened here. And in this case, it is easier actually. It becomes 1 plus 1 by n, and n plus p plus 1 divided by n plus p, that becomes 1 plus 1 by n plus p. So what is nice now is that 1 cancels out. You're left out with 1 by n plus p minus 1 by n, modulus of that. Use triangle inequality, and note that these are positive numbers, 1 by n plus p and 1 by n. So it becomes less than or equal to 1 by n plus p plus 1 by n. Again, 1 by n plus p is less than 1 by n. So the total sum becomes less than 2 by n. Therefore, modulus of n plus p plus 1 by n plus p minus n plus 1 by n is less than 2 by n. The rest of it is the same. That if you take any epsilon greater than 0, choose your little n greater than equal to box of 2 by epsilon plus 1. Then for any positive integer p, you will get that modulus of n plus p plus 1 by n plus p minus n plus 1 by n will be less than epsilon, because now n greater than equal to box 2 by epsilon plus 1 means that n is greater than 2 by epsilon, which means that 2 by n is less than epsilon, right? So the same argument for all three of the examples actually, but basic thing which you have to notice here is that when you have when you are doing the problem using n plus p and n, you should take care that the end result here, the estimate which you are making, should not contain p in its expression. Otherwise, you will not get a correct answer. Okay, so let us look at another example. Suppose I look at the sequence 2 to the power n. So what is this sequence looking like? It is 2, 2 squared, 2 cube, etc. So it is a monotonically increasing unbounded above sequence, and it is actually not a Cauchy sequence. That is what I want to say. So again, for this, even though I have started it by taking an epsilon between 0 and 1 and so on, I want to say that this sequence is not Cauchy. If it were a Cauchy sequence, then for any epsilon greater than equal to 0, sorry, for any epsilon greater than 0, something should have happened. So when I want to say that it is not Cauchy, I work out and find out that it is not Cauchy. I should be able to find out at least one epsilon greater than 0 for which the criterion will not hold. Let's go back again. When we say that the sequence is a Cauchy sequence, we are saying for all epsilon greater than 0, Cauchy's criterion should hold. That is, you should be able to get a capital N positive integer so that this happens. So if something is not a Cauchy sequence, that means that this should fail. So it will fail how? You will be able to get at least one epsilon greater than 0 for which this will not hold. That is what you are trying to show. So again, when you're doing tackling these type of problems, you should notice at what is happening to the sequence itself first of all, because you don't know for what epsilon it will fail, or given epsilon which capital N I should take, and so on. These things are not clear beforehand. That is why notice in the previous example also we saw what is happening to the distance between the terms of the sequences. We saw that there is such estimate available, and therefore we could make a comment. Similarly, here also, before making a comment, we will see what is happening to these two terms of the sequences. So look at the nth term and look at the mth term. Without loss of generality, assume that n is greater than m, because otherwise I would have put a modulus and so on. So I'm not bothering about that. Suppose n is greater than m. Then if you look at 2 to the power n minus 2 to the power m, you can take 2 to the power m common. So if you take 2 to the power m common, what will be inside left out? It will be 2 to the power n minus m minus 1. Now what is 2 to the power n minus m? N is greater than m. So n minus m is greater than 0. So therefore, and n m are what? They are integers. So n minus m is a positive integer. So that means it is an integer greater than equal to 1. So therefore 2 to the power n minus m will be greater than equal to 2. So 2 to the power n minus m minus 1 will be greater than equal to 1. I have made several such typos. Here it should be greater than equal to. Please forgive me for that. So this number is actually greater than equal to 1, because n could be equal to m plus 1, right? So m plus 1 minus m would give 2 here. So 2 minus 1, you would get exactly equal to 1. That is possible. So this should be greater than equal to. So whatever this is greater than equal to 1, this thing in the bracket, so this is greater than equal to 2 to the power m. But now what is 2 to the power m? 2 to the power m is going to be, least value is going to be 2 at least, right? So it is going to be, because why? M is a positive integer. So since m is a positive integer, its least value is 1. So 2 to the power m, least value is 2 to the power 1. So that is 2. So it is at least greater than 1, right? So what have you got? Even if there is a less than or equal to, in fact, there is a less than or equal to here, total effect is that 2 to the power n minus 2 to the power m is becoming greater than 1. So what have you got? That if you take your epsilon to be a positive number less than 1, then for any n greater than m, the difference between 2 to the power n and 2 to the power m becomes greater than epsilon. So what does that tell you? That tells you that you will not be able to get a positive integer n, so that after the nth, capital Nth term, the distance between the nth term and the mth term will become less than epsilon. Have I made myself clear? Let us see. We have understood this, that if I take any n greater than m, and if I take epsilon to be between 0 and 1, then I can show that 2 to the power n minus 2 to the power m is greater than epsilon, right? So for any epsilon between 0 and 1, I will not be able to get a positive integer n, after which the distance between the nth term and mth term will be less than epsilon, because it is going to be greater than epsilon. That is all I'm trying to say. Look at Cauchy's criterion again. Here there was a modulus, but if you just take n to be greater than m, then 2 to the power n is automatically greater than 2 to the power m. So the difference is 2 to the power n minus 2 to the power m. That is what you have done in that particular example, right? So this has become greater than epsilon. So there is no possibility for such an epsilon. So I said that to show that something is not a Cauchy sequence, you should be able to get at least one epsilon positive where the criterion fails. So you see that there are actually infinitely many epsilons where the criterion fails, and they are any epsilon between 0 and 1. Actually, you could have taken any epsilon between 0 and 2 also for this particular thing. So this sequence is therefore not a Cauchy sequence. Okay. So we will prove two simple results here. The first one is that every Cauchy sequence is bounded. This is the proof of this result will follow a pattern which we saw earlier also when we proved that every convergent sequence is bounded. Similar type of thing we will do here. What we did for convergent sequences was that since it was converging to a limit, so after a term, capital Nth term, we had given an estimate for every modulus of xn, right? And for the first few terms till the capital N minus 1th term, we had finitely many numbers, so we could make an estimate there. So even if you have forgotten, you look at this proof, you will be able to understand as to what is happening, and then if you compare it with that proof which we did earlier, then it will become clearer. So suppose xn is a Cauchy sequence. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the Cauchy's criterion is satisfied. So instead of so fix a value of epsilon 1, suppose. So for epsilon equal to 1, there will be a positive integer capital N, such that for all n m greater than equal to capital N, mod xm minus xn will be less than 1. Right? So I could have carefully written m greater than n on all that, but even if I don't write, it is okay. So this is true because it is a Cauchy sequence. Now let us take any little n greater than equal to capital N and look at modulus of xn. Then what can you say about this? This is equal to mod of xn minus x capital N plus x capital N. No problems. So treat x little n minus x capital N as one number and x capital N as the second number. Use triangle inequality. What do you get? Modulus of xn, x little n, is less than or equal to modulus of x little n minus x capital N plus x cap modulus of x capital N. This is okay by triangle inequality. Now you have taken your little n to be greater than equal to capital N. So this number mod of xn minus x capital N is going to be less than 1 because of this condition which the sequence satisfies. So therefore you get that this is less than 1 plus mod of x capital N. So now since you fixed this 1 here, you have fixed your term capital nth term. So x capital N is a fixed number. So what have you shown? You have shown that after the capital nth term, the modulus of any term xn is going to be less than 1 plus mod x capital N, this fixed number. So all you're left out is you want to show that the Cauchy sequence is bounded. So you want to get such a relation for every term of the sequence. What have you done? You have done it for terms after the capital Nth term. So whatever are left out, you just list them. What do you get? Mod x1, mod x2, mod x3, and so on till mod x capital N minus 1. So these are the terms which we have not been able to estimate as yet. And you also throw in this estimate 1 plus mod xn and look at the set. So again, there may be some repetitions. So what we mean is look at the set of which would contain all of these values. Okay. So this is a finite set. So you can talk about the maximum of that. So maximum of that you call something capital K. Now, each of these numbers are non-negative, right? They are all greater than equal to 0. And this one, 1 plus mod xn, is strictly greater than 0. So therefore, if you look at the maximum, that will be strictly greater than 0. And the way you have chosen your capital K, notice that mod x1, mod x2, mod x3, etc. till mod xn minus 1, they are all going to be less than or equal to K because it is the maximum of them. And also for little n greater than equal to capital N, mod xn is less than 1 plus mod x capital N, and that is less than or equal to k. So mod xn is less than or equal to capital K for all little n positive integer. So you have got that a Cauchy sequence is necessarily bounded. So hopefully this may brings to your mind the previous proof and you can compare. Okay, the next result is that the converse is not true. That is, if you are given a bounded sequence, it will not be Cauchy. So I have given you the um, final declaration in the beginning of this lecture itself. I have told you that Cauchy sequences are going to be convergent and convergent sequences are going to be Cauchy. So there is actually no difference between Cauchy sequences and convergent sequences in the real line. There are other places where there is a difference, but that is some uh, lectures later on, not even in this particular semester. Sometime later on you will see that there is going to be a basic difference, but at least for real line I have already told you, even though we have not proved it, that Cauchy sequences are equivalent to convergent sequences. So we saw that for convergent sequences also you could find out bounded sequence which were not convergent. So same thing is expected here also, that you have proved that a Cauchy sequence is bounded. What you have to now prove is that a bounded sequence need not be a Cauchy sequence. So the example which I have taken is the similar example, same example I think, is the oscillating sequence -1 to the power n. So what is this sequence? How does it look like? We have seen it many times. From it starts with -1, value -1, the first term, second term is 1, third term is -1, fourth term is 1, and so on. So this sequence is clearly bounded because all the values of its terms are uh, between the close interval -1 to 1. Actually, they take only two values, -1 and 1. So it is a bounded sequence. Very good. And this is not a Cauchy sequence. To see that, you just notice that if I look at any odd term of the sequence and if I look at any even term of the sequence, then the distance between them is going to be equal to 2. Clear, right? The odd terms are all equal to -1, the even terms are all equal to 1. So if you look at the distance between them, it is going to be 1 minus -1, so that is going to be 2. I have written it in a different fashion. I have written -1 to the power 2n minus 1 minus -1 to the power 2m. So this becomes equal to modulus of -1 minus 1. So that is modulus of -2, so that is equal to 2. So the distance between two terms, one of which is odd and the other is even, is always going to be greater than 2. So if you take epsilon to be a positive the real number less than 2, then what happens is that you will not be able to get a term after which, taking any terms of the sequence, the distance between them will become less than epsilon. It is not possible, because if you fix up any term, capital nth term, after that you will have the odd terms and the even terms, and the distance between the odd terms and the even terms are always going to be greater than epsilon. So there is no possibility of getting a positive integer capital N so that the Cauchy's criterion is satisfied if you take your epsilon to be less than 2, the positive epsilon to be less than 2. So this sequence is not Cauchy, even though it is a bounded sequence. The previous example, 2 to the power n, was also not a Cauchy sequence, but unfortunately this was an unbounded sequence, right? It is just 2, 2 squared, 2 cube, and so on. So it is a sequence which is monotonically increasing, bounded above, unbounded above, sorry. And this one is a example to show that a bounded sequence may not be Cauchy. Okay, and the last result is, which I have been promising, is that a convergent sequence is always going to be a Cauchy sequence. So how will you prove this? You start with a convergent sequence. So suppose limit n tending to infinity xn is equal to L. You want to show that the sequence xn is a Cauchy sequence. So take any epsilon greater than 0. First of all, you know that it is convergent. So use that. There is a capital N positive integer, so that for all little n greater than equal to capital N, modulus of xn minus L is less than epsilon by 2. This condition holds for any arbitrary epsilon. So for epsilon by 2, you find out your capital N so that this holds. This inequality holds. So then what you do is you choose any m and n greater than equal to capital N. Whether m is greater than n or less than n or equal to n, it does not matter. So then if you look at mod of xm minus xn, you write this as mod of xm minus L plus L minus xn. Okay, so then treat xm minus L as one number and xn minus L as another number. Then modulus of xm minus xn is actually equal to mod of xm minus L minus xn minus L, right? So use triangle inequality. This becomes less than or equal to mod xm minus L plus mod xn minus L, each of which is less than epsilon by 2. So mod xm minus xn becomes less than epsilon. So if a sequence is a convergent sequence, then for any epsilon greater than 0, the Cauchy's criterion is satisfied. So therefore, xn is a Cauchy sequence. Straightforward. The other way is not so straightforward. So for that, we have to learn something called subsequences, and this we will do in our next lecture. Let us stop here.